Hi, everyone. I'm Varsha from Vivaldi, and I'm very, very excited to be in conversation with two stalwarts from the tech industry who have been working towards giving better privacy on internet through their products and services. On this year's Data Privacy Day, it's wonderful to be speaking with a Vivaldi partner and a person who has championed personal data protection for over 15 years. Robert Beans, the co-founder and CEO of Startpage and Startmail. And of course, we have the co-founder and CEO of Vivaldi, Jon von Tetzchner. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha.
Really, I'm really looking forward to touch upon various topics that you are passionate about. Robert, I'll start with you first. How has Startpage recognized this day in the past, and what are you focused on this year?
Yeah, it's funny to see how time flies, because when the first Data Privacy Day was introduced, I think it was 2007, Startpage was already out there as the world's first privacy search engine. And it was a time when everyone was still embracing this brave new world that tech companies promised us with their so-called free products. And no one was seeing the darker side of that brave new world yet, where our behavior was increasingly being watched and registered, and personal profiles were being built and exploited by those same tech companies. And privacy is such an important topic to be aware of and help educate people on that. At Startpage, we've always tried to create some attention around the yearly Data Privacy Day on the 28th of January. It's not always easy to find a specific topic or attach it to a new feature that you just happen to release around that time. But we've always generally tried to attach something to it to help increase general privacy awareness.
Yeah, and Jon, how has this been for Vivaldi? I've been with Vivaldi since a very long time now, so I know that we've been talking about privacy as our core, So for us, a particular day doesn't matter, but we would want to know your thoughts also on this.
Yeah, I think, this is obviously an important day, and I think there's important things happening as more and more people are actually realizing the problems with the data collection that is happening today. I think it's kind of special that both in the EU and the US, there's discussions on regulation, which I think it's taken too long. But it's really good to see things moving. And I think in a way, that's what we really want to see. The internet is a beautiful thing. And for me, this is a little bit personal. I've been working with the web since 1992. From working at Telenor Research and the like, I've been working with web browsers since 1994. With Opera first, and then with Vivaldi, and I just think that there are certain companies that have been ruining the web by collecting information and making the collection of information that's something that is acceptable. That they are basically profiling all of us and making that information available to others for them to influence our opinions and the like. So I think there's some very important things that have been happening recently, and I think more and more people are realizing the damage that allowing this kind of data collection is doing to our society and to the world.
Robert, I know that you feel very, very passionately about privacy. I've been reading about you. How did you end up creating the world's first private search engine?
Yeah, basically by coincidence. I had become the CEO of Startpage in 2003. I have a legal background as well, and out of some feeling of curiosity, I wanted to know how much data we were storing, because I thought it might impact potential liability if data got lost or stolen or hacked or whatever. So that's why I came up with the question to my technical team and said, can you give me an update, because I'm not that technical, on what data we're storing and why we're storing it. And when they presented me the picture, I was really shocked, because we were storing people's IP address. We were setting identifying cookies. We registered when people came to our site, what they searched for, what they clicked on, when they came back, you name it. And at that moment, I sort of had an epiphany, if you want to call it that way, of realizing that all those searches that people do on a search engine could be tied together. And if you see the total picture of searches that is being done, you basically look to someone's soul. You can see every little detail of their life, their fears, their worries, their medical condition, their psychological state, their financials. It's crazy. And I realized it is highly unethical to do that. So I said, I don't want to do this. I think it's not ethical to do that. And that's when we started creating Startpage as the first world's privacy search engine. And we deleted everything that we had. We haven't really used it, but the tech people thought it was common sense to keep it because it was standard protocol, and you never know if that data comes in handy. But they had a sort of a blind spot for the privacy aspects of it, I thought. And I said, we got to get rid of this. And I think at the same time, it'll catch on someday. It's taken quite a long time, but we've used that time to build out Startpage as a technically really great tool to protect your privacy with. And that's basically how we started. It was in 2006.
Brilliant. Actually, Jon would definitely agree on a lot of points what you've made there. He's been working with the web since the very, very start and feels that any software does not have the right to profile or track its users. And there has been so much of discussion about third-party tracking online lately, So let's talk about that. How does third-party tracking impact our digital well-being, in your view, Jon?
I think, there's a lot of tracking, first party, second party, third party. There's a lot of different ways to track, but clearly there's certain companies that have been collecting an awful lot of information. And first party, you have browsers actually engaging actively in collecting profiles on their users. And for me, that's obviously very wrong. That's not something that browsers should be doing. Then you have, like Robert talked about, kind of search engines collecting information about your searches. Then you have the combination of, if you're utilizing tools like Facebook, where everything that you're doing on that page, what you're reading, what you're watching, how long you're watching videos, how long you stop to view a page or content, all of that information in a lot of cases is being stored and on quite a lot of other sites as well. This data is then being collected and combined with data from potentially you doing things in the real world. There are companies that are specializing in collecting information about what you're doing, for example, your movements. I believe Google is storing your location every other minute by default, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then there's even companies that are using Bluetooth beacons to collect information about what you're doing inside a mall, for example. And then you combine that with your buying, when you end up buying something. So they can track if you watch an ad, for example, online somewhere, that you would end up buying a product in a physical store. So the level of tracking is just crazy. And then the question is, what can that be used for? Now, it may be used to influence you in your purchasing decisions, but it may also be used to influence you in kind of your opinions and potentially also in political opinions and potentially even to be used by states to destabilize other states. There's so many ways that you can utilize this data. So for me, this isn't just about your personal privacy. This is a question of what's reasonable for companies to be able to do. And I just think it's unreasonable for companies to be able to profile us. I think we always have to ask the question, would we accept that the government would do the kind of things that those private companies are doing? And I think the answer to that question for most of us would no. We don't think the government should know every little thing that we do. And when those companies then make that information available to third parties, which may include governments, that's a terrible situation. And I think in a way we have to see, okay, the damage this is doing to us, how it's dividing us. If you look at before this kind of technology became prevalent, in the US, They now have recommendations on how do you deal with Thanksgiving and Christmas when you're meeting families that don't agree with you politically. Not just about agreeing politically, but living on a different planet at times. Now, how did that happen? And I think, sadly, part of the reason why it happened is the collection of profiles of users, which is why it's so important to stop this. This isn't about, okay, I have nothing to hide kind of situation, why some people tend to say, I have nothing to hide, so who cares, so that they know that I walked over there or did this or whatever. But it isn't just a question of your personal privacy. It's a question of collective privacy. It's a question of what is it acceptable for people to do? Is it acceptable that someone reads your email? Is it acceptable that someone listens to your calls? Is it acceptable that someone working in your house collects information about what you have of things in your house? I mean, what is it reasonable for companies to do? And is it reasonable for them to collect and use that information for algorithms and for other purposes? And my answer to that question is no. And obviously, the first step then is, do we do that ourselves? And the answer is no. We don't want to know what you're doing with our browser, your browser. We don't want to know, and we go very far in that. We don't even do basic things like kind of collecting. I mean, it's very common with software to collect information about how people are using the software anonymized. We don't even do that. It's a principle. It's also a principle that we just want to listen to our users. Keep it simple. Listen to what people have to say, because it's not only about what the majority of people want. It's also a question of what do the minorities want? How can we adapt to the needs of every single user?
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely true. It's this kind of tracking, it does impact the digital well-being of people on the society as well. So, Robert, have you seen any impact on digital well-being? If you have any examples, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Jon just said. It's first of all, it's important to realize how much more online we are constantly. I think 80% of the Americans use the internet a couple of times a day, and 30% say they are constantly online, attached to their mobile or their computers. And the pandemic has only increased that trend. And our daily activities are shifting more and more into that digital space. Whatever we do, send private messages, shop, work online, you name it. And behind our scenes, without most people knowing, although the trend is definitely positive when it comes to awareness, websites are viewing you, recording you, creating profiles, everything that Jon said as well. And there's two levels of why that is hurtful to us as human beings and to us as a society. It's on the individual level. We're served thousands of ads every day, all of them personalized to increase the chances that you'll make that final click and buy stuff and make big tech companies even richer. But it also gives you a negative impact in your well-being, because it's creepy. In psychology, they have this phenomenon that's called the mere exposure effect. Just by being exposed to something, ads, you start viewing it in a more positive light. And advertising that is served to us again and again, it manipulates our perception of things. And it starts messing with our free will as human beings on an individual level, but rightfully, Jon mentioned this also, on the level of political things as well. If you look at Cambridge Analytica, how that helped Trump win the election and how it helped Brexit to its narrow majority, simply by analyzing and exploiting Facebook data and subsequently very specifically and cost-effectively targeting exactly those swing voters in those swing states that would help them get a majority. It's eroding our free democracies without any oversight, and it's darn scary. That's also why in societies I see, and everyone sees, parties seem to be drifting more apart. the positions become more extreme. And I definitely think that the whole tech world and the algorithms in the tech world that try to send you more of what you already have seen, put you in this tech bubble, send you more extreme information in that direction because they want you to continue to be involved on certain websites and continue to click on certain things. The role that those algorithms play, showing you more extreme content after tracking you, is also a terrible thing that drifts us more apart in society, and with all the bad consequences of it. On an individual level, of course, it's also happening, and there's many well-documented situations where it can negatively impact you. I remember that Target situation where a store in Minneapolis called Target, they disclosed the secret pregnancy of a young teenage girl. And before her own family, I think even herself, was aware of it, it happened because they were analyzing the young woman's shopping behavior. And the algorithms of the store had identified her as being pregnant and started to send her corresponding advertising. And the pregnancy ads that were seen by her father, who was horrified, and he became very angry at the shop and confronted the store with it. But the real creepy thing was the store was right. And it just shows us how much can be derived from your online behavior and interaction. So I remember another thing that Facebook, I think it was 2017, they were able to tell advertisers when teenagers were feeling insecure and worthless, and when they needed a confidence boost, and thus they would be particularly vulnerable to advertising at that moment. It's just, there's so many examples of how it impacts us at an individual level as well.
Yeah, that's true. My God, it's horrific, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But question is to you. How do you feel people can protect their online privacy and also their digital well-being? It's such horrible stories going around. It's very scary. Yes.
I think, obviously there is a choice. I mean, people have a choice in the products that they choose, and if they choose products that have a better kind of view of how their data should be used or not, I mean, again, preferably not, then that's a good starting point. Trying to be careful with what kind of traces you leave on the internet, enabling things like tracker blockers and the like to make it harder for people to be able to track you. But in reality, I still believe that what we need is for society to take a stand here as well. And I think this is part of where we all have to try to influence the politicians to do the right thing. And there is movements in this direction, both in Europe and the US. Now, the problem is that our competitors that are collecting an awful lot of data, they are trying to influence the decision making, and they're putting on a tremendous amount of money to try to influence them, to try to tell a story that if you don't collect this level of information, then there's a problem that small and medium-sized companies, that's the story they're going with. The small and medium-sized companies will falter because they can't use these data anymore to target their customers. But the reality is that before this kind of advertisement was made available and the early days of the internet, the ads were more contextual. And that was working fine. Now, the most irritating ads at the time were pop-ups. So we built in pop-up blockers to stop them. But I mean, those ads were irritating, but not as damaging as the ads that we're seeing today. So I really think that we need our politicians to be brave and to take decisions that are going against these larger companies, and we need to support them in making that choice. And I think that's really important. Now, in the meantime, again, choose products that share your belief that data shouldn't be collected.
Yeah, so I think it's lucky that both our companies are based in Europe, where our users can feel happy about our companies falling under GDPR, which gives them additional privacy protection, obviously, being one of the stringent privacy legislations in the world. And I agree with Jon that it's always good to show some activism and to make people contact politicians and lawmakers to make those changes, because eventually it's got to come from the grassroots, from the people who are changing legislation and laws. On the individual level, there's many steps that people can take and sort of vote already and make a big difference for themselves. There's plenty very logical steps to take, privacy-friendly alternatives, tools that don't use tracking cookies. For search, replace Google with Startpage. We have an anonymous view feature within Startpage that allows you to visit websites anonymously, basically better than a VPN and completely free. Use a secure email service. Of course, we recommend our sister company Startmail there. It offers creating email aliases on the fly and that you can use and delete at any time, and they will help you keep your mail address safe from spam. There's all sorts of interesting features in it. Use a privacy-respecting browser like Vivaldi. There's many privacy-respecting alternatives, and I always suggest going to privacytools.io. I think they have a very complete list of alternatives for almost anything. You need to defend yourself against cookies and trackers. You already mentioned, I was allowed to talk a little bit about the Startpage privacy protection extension that we just released. We're very excited about it. We offer already the anonymous searching and the anonymous browsing with the anonymous view, but the privacy protection extension that we just introduced protects you over from over 1,200 trackers and cookies. It's a free browser extension you can download in the stores. Very easy to use. It gives you control and visibility over what personal data websites are trying to track. And it detects and it blocks third-party site trackers. It does a lot of stuff. It also replaces social media tracking defaults with this click to activate option. Many like Facebook, they have this default setting that makes them already allow to track you, and we replace those. It also adds a visual 1 to 5 privacy rating scale based on every site that you visit and their privacy practices. It's very handy. I recommend downloading it and giving it a spin.
Yeah, we'll try that. Thank you.
Yeah.
At Vivaldi, actually, Robert, we also think that it's great that more and more organizations are taking care of this and bringing privacy options to their services. So it's really nice that you guys have got this in. Do you want to add something on this? Because we also have we have loads of great privacy settings, and we also have a built-in tracker and ad blocker, which is really helpful. So it's really nice to see companies coming and giving these solutions to their users, because we just want better privacy for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's really positive that Startpage is coming up with solutions like this. And I think the more of us that are kind of pushing in the same direction, the better. I mean, I think more minds thinking of the problem and trying to deal with it, the better. And again, we are doing things on our side, like you said, the tracker blocker and the ad blockers and things like that we have built in, and we're always looking at ways we could improve on stuff like this. And obviously just not engaging in the kind of surveillance industry, which I just don't think a browser should be doing. And I think that's one of the most important things. In some ways, what we are doing is what we're not doing, which is, again, not engaging in the collection of information ourselves. And obviously trying to keep people safe on the internet. I mean, the tools that we are all building, they do help. And then finally, we also need regulation. But I think in the meantime, it's good that companies like ourselves and Startpage are doing the necessary things to try to keep people safe.
Yeah, true. Robert, a question to you. How is Startpage evolving as a privacy-centered business?
I would say Startpage is transforming from a private search engine to a privacy technology company. And as the CEO and co-founder of Startpage, I think it's very gratifying to see that taking place, and to see our privacy offering advance and broaden into new channels. It's basically what I've always hoped that would happen, an extension of what we offer as a Startpage as a privacy platform. We've shielded people's personal privacy with the most private search engine for 15 years, but now we have the Startpage privacy protection extension to add on top of that. We offer the opportunity to secure yourself across the entire internet. And I feel fortunate to lead the team that is now offering this comprehensive tool that helps protect people's right to privacy, and for the wonderful community that has grown around Startpage.
Yeah, and also choosing the right partners. So
absolutely.
My next question is to Jon regarding this, that why choosing the right partners is so important, Jon?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of obviously finding people that share your beliefs, that share kind of your thinking with regards to data collection and where we want to move the world. And I think that's clearly extremely important. That there are good companies that actually want to fight the data collection and want to move us forward. I'm a geek. I've been that since I was more or less born. I was lucky enough to be born in the early days of computing in some ways. So I started to play with computers very early, and obviously I'm very invested in the web. And my thinking has always been, there is the point was we should get people online because it's the great equalizer. There's so many positive things about getting people on the internet, that they can get information and they can communicate, and in some ways making the world smaller, which is obviously why I get really angry when people are messing with that. And I would like to try to help us get back on track, because we want technology to help us move the world forward and not the opposite. And currently there are certain issues, there are certain companies that are doing bad things, and we need to fight that, whether it's through regulation or providing choices. And I think we are seeing some good choices come up, and I think that's really important.
Yeah,
and part of this is also, I mean, Robert's been talking about some of the things that they're doing, and I think there are certain things that we are trying to do as well, which is part of this, right? Things like our mail client. Now, the question is, why is the mail client important? Now, you have mail services, that's important. But the mail client is also important, in particular, when you're, for example, moving from one mail service to another. Are you able to get the mails in, and you're able to kind of utilize those services without having to log in? Because part of the issue that you have is you're logging into services that you're recognizable as a user across devices. And that's unfortunate. Now, if you look at, for example, our synchronization service that we use for the browser, we don't see the data that's being synchronized. You have a separate password, which in some ways is a bother. You have to, two passwords. Why do I need two passwords? Well, the one is to log into the service, and the other one is to make sure that the data is encrypted in a way that we can't read it, because we don't want to be able to read your data. So there are things like this, which I think is important, and the decisions that we're making, trying to make it possible for people to more easily move away from the kind of being locked into some of our competitors that really have a number of services that they lock in, and it makes it really hard to get out. But the mail client we are doing, the calendar we are doing, even the news feeds. Now, the news feeds is an old technology. So why is news feeds interesting? The newsfeed is interesting because most of the news aggregation services, if you look at something, they're utilizing what you're reading to create a cocoon. So you continue to get more and more of the same, influenced by advertisers as well. Now, if you're getting the feeds, you're basically just subscribing to a news service. That's different. And it also allows you to find back to data. So there's a number of choices like this that we're trying to do, which is help you get away from the big guys and their closed environments, and I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do, and work with good companies to do the right thing, companies that think alike.
Yeah, and on that note, I have to say that Robert, you're also aware that last year we had sent Vivaldi along with 15 other companies who think alike, including Startpage. We had written to the EU and the senators in the EU and the US for banning surveillance-based advertising. So I think it's moving ahead now because there's a lot of pressure from businesses like Startpage and Vivaldi and other more companies. And we saw the most recent development, just that also came out last week, the unveiling of the bill to ban surveillance advertising in the US. What do you think about that? I think it's going in the right direction, but what are your thoughts on that, Robert?
First to comment on Jon's remarks about the whole ecosystem of big tech companies. It's their intention to keep you within that system. And that's why I agree so much with him that it's important that alternatives are there everywhere you're looking for alternatives, and that you are able to escape those ecosystems that really tie you into them, and where the network effect is trying to keep you in as well. I always give the example of WhatsApp. It's very hard to leave WhatsApp because all your friends are on WhatsApp. I personally made the move at a certain moment. I said, if I preach this, I have to do it as well. So I'm giving up my WhatsApp account. And I was confronted with a lot of interesting remarks, to put it that way. But it's important those alternatives are there. And that's why I enjoy working with Vivissimo as a partner as well. When it comes to advertising based on the third-party cookie advertising that's taking place, the system is simply not sustainable. Human beings are demanding change. They don't want to be tracked. And legislation authorities are finally putting that in legislation. And it's no longer sustainable to build a marketing and advertising ecosystem based upon tracking of people. So from that perspective, I think we're moving into a world where contextual marketing is going to be much more important. The first-party cookies are going to be more important. The content that you have on a website are going to be more important for marketeers. Influencers, maybe you can do still some email campaigns, but those will become more important for marketing parties. And it's about time. I mean, I always like to draw the parallel with Startpage, where we've been we've been profitable since 2005. And the only thing we've been using is contextual ads. So if you search for bicycles, the only information that the ad provider has is someone is searching for bicycles, and they show you a bicycle ad, and that's exactly what you want to see. It's relevant. They don't show you anything based upon a profile because it's not there, and they can't track you over various websites with those ads either. So it is a marketing model that is quite possible, and we're the living proof of that as Startpage. So I think that's the way things are moving in the world, happily. It's happening a lot later than I would have hoped it to happen, but it is finally coming and creating some traction, finally.
That's true. It is happening. It's slowly, but it's happening.
Yeah.
It's good to see so much of awareness. People are taking a note of these things. What are your thoughts, Jon?
Actually, I would like to add to this, because I think it's an important point that the business model that we had on ads before, which is what Robert is talking about, it's a model that's tried. It's worked for years. And if you try to think about that, was the more prevalent model, say, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. There wasn't as much of the tracking at the time. And what has changed since then? One of the things that has changed, again, I told you, my focus has been getting people on the internet because there's so much quality information out there. But the reality, what has been happening in the last few years is certain companies, and should we say news information sites and the like, they've been going behind paywalls. Now, what changed that they had to go behind paywalls when they didn't have to do that in the early days of the internet? I mean, the change in the ad model is part of that. Because initially, when you would have ads, there would be a very big price difference between the placement of the ad. If you're placing the ad on a high-profile site, you would have to pay a lot more. If you were placing an ad on a low-profile site, you would pay very little. So it would be really hard in some ways for kind of people to make revenues until we could say until they gained a following and the like, and people would like to place ads on their sites because they were recognizing as they were quality sites. Now the ads are following the person, which and obviously it also means that suddenly there's a much larger volume of ads. So if you just think logically, what happens is that you get paid more for a random position and less for a quality position. Now, this is a model that makes it really good for, should we say, fake news sites and the like, because they can afford to just pay them, spend some revenues at getting traffic their way, and then they have enough ads and tracking to generate the revenues. While it gets to be harder for the bigger kind of news sites and the like that have a big cost involved. So I think there's a consequence in change of business models. And there's a consequence, again, our competitors are trying to say, well, it would be really bad to go back to the old model. But the winners and the losers, if you look at the winners of the losers with this change, the change has had negative implications in so many ways, including business models for good companies. There's a reason why you want to see the change. I mean, one of the things that we've been seeing ourselves is there's maybe less of some of the tech sites and the like. I mean, good tech magazines that haven't been able to sustain themselves in the change of the business model, which has been sad to see. So we think we need to understand the changes that we are seeing in society as a consequence of these model changes, which is, again, why it's really, really, really important that we get back to sustainable ads that actually work, because we want things to be free on the internet and we want quality to be free on the internet.
It's all about quality, actually, and what we are giving people, and not really cheating on them. Literally, yeah. But it was such a wonderful chat, an eye-opening chat, Robert. I know that you do not do many video interviews, and we're very thankful that you agreed to this, and we are getting to speak with you. And it's really nice that you came and gave your time to us and spoke to you as well, and got to know each other better. It's always nice to talk to people who think alike and are doing the right thing, basically. But before we end this, I want to ask one question. We've learned that you both are very passionate about giving great products to your people, and also giving better privacy to the users. You're passionate about privacy, definitely, and doing the right thing. What is the other thing which you are passionate about, which probably people don't know? Robert?
You're right. I'm a private person, and I guess that's why I came up with the whole understanding of the concept at the time. And you're right, I don't do much interviews, but I want to say already that I really enjoyed talking to you and Jon, and hearing his perspective of things that also helps me understand things better in my life. I think it's very helpful to exchange ideas, and I think we think alike a lot. And that is good to hear, and it supports me. If you want to ask me about my personal life, I'm always a bit hesitant in telling you, but I guess you're hinting at flying,
yes.
Right? I'm willing to admit that I've been a professional pilot for 36 years with a Dutch company called KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines. And I've always tried to combine those two jobs to the best of my ability. I really enjoyed it. I've flown over the world and visited many places where I had something to do for Startpage or Startmail, and then combined it with a flight, which was totally relaxing for me in combination with working at the office in off days. So that's probably an answer to your question.
Thank you for that. I'm sure the people who will be listening to this would get to know a little bit more about you. Wonderful. Okay. And Jon, I know one. I can answer, but I want you to answer.
Well, I mean, Robert mentioned flying, and the reality is I do like traveling around the world, seeing different cultures and getting to know people. One of the things that I've always enjoyed doing is meeting Vivaldi users, which I've done in many parts of the world. It's always interesting to get their feedback. And again, from my side, it's always been with the products that we make, it's about the individual. I think there's something wrong with only seeing everyone instead of seeing seeing the whole.
Yeah.
Because I think you end up basically not seeing the individual. You end up just seeing some average person that doesn't exist. And I'd like to see the individual and try to adapt to the needs of the individuals. And I think there's a different kind of difference in thinking that we have there. Now, my interest has always been technology. I mean, I've been interested in technology since I was a kid. I've been doing computers. So I do love computers. I have a lot of computers. I have computers that are old and new. Yeah. Probably my collection would be a nice museum in itself. But
I like to play arcade games.
And I do like arcade games as well. I mean, I do have a few arcade games, so I enjoy that as well. And I mean, by the way, when it comes to the computers, I mean, I had, when I've been traveling and meeting Vivaldi users and the like, some of them have given me old computers. It's been so kind of them. So I have some rather unique things that I've been given, both in like Russia and Japan and the like. So it's been really nice from that perspective. But I have a passion for kind of changing the world in a positive way. I want us to make a difference in what we are doing. And I think we are doing that with the products that we build and the stance that we take on moving the world forward. And I think it's important that companies are doing that. It is not only about the bottom line, it's about doing the right thing, and that we have a responsibility for the society we live in together.
Yes. I think with that note, we could end this conversation, taking it ahead by just the mere thought that we could do so much better with these kind of, with the thought that we have to just do the right thing and make the world a better place to live. We all have to be responsible in terms of making the right choice. Thank you so much to both of you that you came on Vivaldi's Browsercast. Thanks a lot. It was lovely speaking with the both of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks,
Robert. Thanks a lot, Varsha and Jon. Really enjoyed it.